because we're now creating new habits with this podcast, I'm going to once again start with a quotation from a book. Listen carefully, Tuomo. We have all had the experience of tremendous loneliness, where books, religion, everything is gone, and we are tremendously, inwardly, lonely, empty. Most of us can't face that emptiness, that loneliness, and we run away from it. And this was from a book called The Book of Life by Jiddu Krishnamurti, a famous Eastern thinker who's passed away a few decades ago. But I was thinking we could talk a little bit today. It's a bit of continuance from the recent topic that we hadn't finished, but about loneliness, and it's part of our culture as well, and any other culture. But what does this passage that I just read to you, what kind of emotions or things that raises in your mind from that?
Yes, that's a very good phrase to start with. And I believe that all of us universally have sometimes felt the feeling of loneliness or at least the fear of being lonely. And these are some of the topics I must quote now, because, I've been a lot of in those trainings from Tony Robbins, and the way he explained, because there is people in the audience who have similar kind of fears, and how he explained that there is these two basic fears of every human being, which is that we won't be enough and that we won't be loved. And it comes down from the basic childhood that we have a survival need to be loved and nurtured by our parents. So it's actually, if a child is not taken care of, it will physically die. And it is a basic need for us to be loved. And then at some point, almost everybody of us develops this fear that we won't be enough and we won't be loved and we will be abandoned. And then it is one of the strongest things we want to avoid. And I think it's also related to the topic that we talked in the previous episodes of, being disconnected is one of the worst things that can happen to a person. And feeling lonely is one of the strongest negative feelings inside us. So I don't know, I would like you to maybe add some input into that. What is your opinion about this?
I think you put it quite well. It's one of the big fears that us humans have, and sometimes it gets mistaken, in my opinion, with solitude and loneliness. Because I personally am I'm the kind of person that enjoys solitude as well. I like being by myself, but it doesn't mean that I'm alone. Because it's also been referred many times that even if you're alone, it doesn't mean that you're lonely. And even if you're surrounded by a lot of people, it doesn't mean that you're not lonely. So it's kind of a state of mind, and it comes from this disconnection, I believe. If you're not connected to anything or anyone, then it's just something that comes from it. But I think you said it pretty well.
Yeah, and I also like that you added that it's not the same as solitude, because I know I've talked with you that you consider yourself very strongly introverted instead of extroverted. So it's actually studied that introverts, the big definition of introvert is that they actually charge their batteries by being alone, while extroverts, they charge their batteries by being around people. And it's a very different thing to feel lonely than feel like you're charging your batteries because you don't want to go out or something while your friends go. Many introverts do that as well. They don't go to places where some extroverts always want to be around people.
Definitely. And actually it must be connected to the personal traits as well. The thing that I just mentioned, that you might be surrounded by a lot of people, but still feel lonely. I think it's probably has to be connected with extroverts and the other way around as well. Like if you are by yourself, but you don't feel lonely, most likely you're an introvert. But I don't have any studies to back it up, but my intuition tells me that this is the case. And it was one of the most interesting books that I've read in the past couple of years is The Quiet by Susan Cain, who she's a famous, I think, TED speaker as well, but she wrote this book about how introverts can cope in the world that's admiring extroverts so much. And she breaks it down quite well.
Yeah, I didn't read it completely, but I read it to some part, and there is definitely topics that I totally agree with her. Maybe some topics that I don't completely agree, but like the basic fundamental things that she says about, and I think most importantly, that the society admires extroversion instead of introversion, and we are kind of like living in a society where like many introverts, I even hear people say these kind of things like, oh, I succeeded in this thing even though I'm an introvert. Oh, I feel like I'm good. Like I can do I remember when I do public speaking, like I could do public speaking even though I'm an introvert. Like, and I'm not a failure. Even like the worst of all, I'm not a failure even though I'm an introvert. So all these phrases to me sound like they have been made to believe there's something wrong with them. Like it's kind of like a disease, they're introvert, while many studies say that actually it's 50-50 about. Some studies say 70-30, some days 50-50 people are extroverted and introverts. So it's definitely just another set of strengths instead of like a weakness or something.
I find a lot of problems with categorizing people in multiple different ways, whether it's introversion and extroversion when it comes to diseases, illnesses, personal traits, because as you just pointed out perfectly, you kind of become a victim of these thoughts then.
Yeah.
And especially if it has a negative connotation, then you start to believe that, okay, I'm not up for this task because I have this and this trait, when all of us, like humanity, has developed, and the evolution has brought us to this space because we are so different from each other and we have different personal traits, and we just have to embrace it. And the fact that we're living here for such a short period of time, we have to try and make most of it with the capabilities that we carry. No one is better or worse than you are when it comes to this kind of personal traits, in my opinion.
Yes, and actually also I remember something from the book that you mentioned, The Quiet, that they had actually made these studies even about leadership, and they discovered that introverted leaders actually, because many people think that, have this pre-assumption that the extroverts are the better leaders. And you can never be a great leader if you are quiet or you're not always ranting and yelling and all this. But they actually made studies, and there was significant evidence of that. An introvert was actually much better leader in an environment where the people in their team were self-orientated. So they didn't need to micromanage or say, do this, do that, but they were much better in that position. While extroverts were actually better leaders when they were leading a team where you need to say like, do this, do this, do this. But it was just another example that it's not either weakness or weakness or either one of them, extroversion or introversion. It's just they are better at leading different kind of teams, which is all the great thing. Like we have been talking previously, that there is different trees in the forest. Some are taller, some are shorter, and they all have their place. But if we feel this kind of like a misalignment, oh, I'm misaligned and something's wrong with me because I'm introvert, that can be very harmful.
What's your experience when in your past you've been working in sales, and both of us know that if you want to make a good impression and build a rapport with the client, you need to become more like them. And as an introvert, I struggled often, especially in the beginning when I was facing an extrovert client. So if I have to step out of my comfort zone in such a way that I have to be a lot more outspoken and all this kind of gestures, I have to increase the gestures and all this kind of shit. Like, did you face similar struggles when you were selling, or?
Yeah, for sure. That is because you need to like adapt to the person. Like we were talking about this mirroring, that you can even like have the same gestures, but most of all like be in the same kind of frequency with them, and you need to adjust, but not so much that you are like not being yourself, because you need to be authentic, but you need to be, like adapting to the person. So of course it's always easier to adapt to a person who is like you.
Definitely. And when it comes to those leaders as well, I have a coming up interview about leadership coming hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But I've also been reading this book by Ginny Rometty, who's a former CEO of IBM. I think the first female CEO of IBM for 10 years. And she's also talking about these different traits of leadership. I'm not sure if she's introverted or not, but it appears from the book that I'm listening that she might be, but she's still, the jury's still out in my head whether or not it's true. But the different traits of leadership, it's quite an interesting aspect as well. Like, how do you choose? Because what I've been seeing even in global corporations, it's not the best leaders who get promoted. It's just the best performers, and this can lead to wrong kind of paths. Because just recently, I also heard from a friend that she'd been enjoying her work for quite a bit, for a few years now. But now they have a new manager, like for the past 2, 3, 4 months or something like that. And now the environment at the workplace is not good anymore, and she wants to leave. Just because of the bad hiring, bad recruitment of a new manager. So yeah, it's not often, like most of the times, it's not the work that they hate, it's the people that they work for.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard that it's most of the time, if people want to leave the organization, is actually because of a supervisor.
Yeah, and it's one of the group of people that I wish to talk to. It's both in the tech industry or leadership, in the tech industry, or people who have been in leadership positions, to pick their brain and see what they have been up to and what is their viewpoints in that regard.
Yeah.
This podcast is a brilliant platform for that.
It is. And actually about leadership, it's very interesting that some of the same principles work in business, they work in family, they work in sports team. And when I was working in the insurance company, they had some great trainers, speakers there that were not related to the industry in any way. So this one head coach of the Finnish hockey team, Assat, who won the Finnish championship back then. And then he also coached the the team of under 20-year-old Finnish to the World Championship. And he was telling to us about the team and how he builds a team. And he said, like, you might be amused about it, but in this level, like professional level, people who are playing the hockey as a profession, you would think they are very professional, like they are. But you would never imagine that there is this guy who is always late and he never shows up anywhere in time. And then there is these people in the locker room who are like always lifting the spirit and having all these grants. And then there is these quiet people who never speak anything, but they just do their job so well and they are off the spotlight. Nobody sees like what goals and assists they made, but they are so loyal workers. And then also he mentioned about these people who were more reserved. They actually many times had better nerve control under pressure. And then there is these, artists, like he mentioned, that were always late and all these, but then they came to, and they did never like a good, like sometimes they don't do any good sob in the ice, like they don't defense or anything, but you send them into the ice and then they make a goal, the winning goal of the game. So you need all these different kind of players in a team. And if you only have one kind of people, they're all quiet, it's going to be so boring. And if it's full of these artists, it's like a circus. So you need all different kind of people in a hockey team. And I believe in an organization. And also a good example in a family, if you see a husband and wife, most of the time they are the opposites of each other in many ways. Like most of the time, the other spouse is introvert and the other one is extrovert, if you want to label them this way. And like so on. So the opposites attract in many ways, and variety really is the beauty in teams and organizations.
That seems to be the case. I've been reading similar studies about that as well. And when it comes to ratios of different ethnicities, different genders, of course, men and women, and like when people come from different backgrounds, then it creates better performing teams oftentimes. And you mentioned also the comparison between business and family environments. Recently, I finished a book that's called Hunt, Gather, and Parent. It's about what ancient cultures can teach the Western societies about raising kids. And there are some interesting examples from them, because it was this American woman who struggled with her toddler. So, and she had one assignment that she went to the Mayan culture village, and she saw over there that like the kids don't cry the same way. They're more independent. They're extremely helpful, and they don't start fighting when they need to go to sleep and all these things. Completely different to what she had experienced with her own child and with the children of her friends. And it stuck to her mind. Why does it have to be like this? Why is it so different from here in the States, in this case, to Maya? So she wanted to write a book about this topic. So she traveled to a village in Mayan culture and then another indigenous culture, Inuits in the northern part of America, and then one more Hadzabe tribe in Africa, to explore their ways of parenting.
Yeah.
And what she found in them is how much more autonomous those kids are, and how much, even from an early age, they give them a lot more responsibilities, and they don't watch over them. They don't give the directions to them. They don't tell them what to do or what not to do, or they don't answer for them. Like, no, my child is happy. Blah, blah, blah. They give all these responsibilities to them from very early age, and also they encourage the natural traits that they have as kids. She mentioned that globally there's two similar traits that every kid shares in any country of the world. These are tantrums and what was the word? Helpfulness. Oh, is there another word for it that I'm now forgetting? But like, they're really willing to help people. So those are two of the traits. And what we tend to do in Western countries is block those innate traits as being helpful toddlers, because of we want to be so efficient in the tasks at home. Don't help me with cleaning because I can do it better. Don't help me with cooking because I can do it faster. You don't need to put your own clothes because I will do it faster. These kind of things. It happens often here. Instead of just inviting them in, doing the tasks, it takes a lot more time in the beginning, and it requires a lot more patience from the parents. But over time, you're actually encouraging their innate helpfulness, and it will then stick to them, in contrast to if you just give them an iPad while you're cooking, even if they wanted to help in the first place. Then you're just telling them that this is not part of your task in the house, and we don't need your help. This helpfulness is not useful. And they learn that way.
Yeah.
But there were quite a few. But I think the biggest one that sticks out as a difference between the indigenous cultures and Western cultures, how they raise kids, is the community element, I suppose.
Hmm.
Because here parents are left alone most of the times. It's in many cases it's just the mother who's 24/7 with the kid from the beginning. Sometimes, hopefully, there's both of the parents who are around. But even then, it's not something that 99.9% of human history, it's never been the case that it's just the parents who are raising the kids. And that's why there's a lot of pressure for mothers specifically, because they have sleepless nights. They cannot, they have to be with the kid all the time. They get frustrated. They get angry. They're, of course, very tired. They can focus on their own well-being. Whereas in other cultures, it can be that the cousins, aunts, uncles, neighbors' kids, siblings, all of them are taken care of, and grandparents as well.
Yeah, that is a very different culture indeed. And in that book, was there some kind of like conclusion, like why is it this way? Why? Okay, like the business is one thing. Was it like the main thing that we are just being too busy and we need to be like effective, or was there some other elements that were mentioned about?
I think that was one of the core principles of it, because we are living in such a structured life here. We have our times to go to bed, time to go to sleep, time to go to work, time to eat. Everything is very structured and effective. So everything is planned out. So there's no room for creativity or flexibility. And when you set a child to do like this, it's against the nature.
Yeah.
It's not like you eat when you're hungry, you sleep when you're sleepy, you help when you want to help, and this kind of things. And I think that was the biggest one, that it's because of the way our society is structured. It's almost a necessity to treat kids like this unless we take more time for ourselves.
Yeah, true. And then also what I noticed, that is quite common, is like overprotecting the kids. And this can definitely be bad for their self-esteem. So let's say about that cooking that you mentioned about. Oh, I'm too busy to let them do it, so this is not my task to help. First of all, they learn this. If some people think like, what is wrong with the kids these days, these millennials, they never listen to their parents. Well, that's where it starts. And then on top of that, you're overprotecting them. So they don't even have the self-esteem that, oh, I could actually make that food. Like now they learn all these patterns of, I'm not capable of doing this. I'm not capable of doing that. So just let me do it. It's too dangerous for you. So then they learn to like not trust in their abilities.
Exactly. She took an example from Africa in Hadzabe tribe when they joined the local tribe for animal hunt, and they were following this lady with the toddler. They were following the tribe who were like way ahead of them, and they struggled to keep up with them. But she was constantly holding the hand of a toddler, like, come, like super careful, like don't step there, don't go there. And they couldn't keep up. And then at some point she had to tell one of the tribe members that like, we cannot keep up. And then he told her that just leave her be. Let her go by herself. And then she let go of the hand, didn't give instructions. And eventually she saw that everything's okay.
Yeah.
And that's the way that they raise kids there. They might have 5-year-old kids who are carrying small babies for long distances and taking care of them because they know how to. I think we are more capable as kids than we are led to believe.
Yeah, and then we come to this famous story. Have you heard this story about how to tame an elephant?
It rings a bell, but I can't recall it.
Yeah, when an elephant is baby, like a very small baby elephant, and they attach it with a chain into a tree. So when it tries to push itself out of the chain, it cannot do it. It tries and it tries and it cannot do it, and it tries again and it cannot do it. After a while, after trying for days or weeks, it just simply quits and realizes, okay, I cannot do it. Then when it grows into an adult elephant, weighing like several thousands of pounds, and then they place the same chain into its leg that it really could cut like a match, but it doesn't even try because it thinks, oh, I cannot do it.
Yeah. And one of the things that it's teaching me is that I used to believe a lot more than that there's not so much that the parent can do. There are certain things that you can do, but the child develops in a way that it develops. But actually, there's a lot that you can do when it comes to the small details, specifically when raising a child. If you want them to become helpful or independent or whatever it may be, but there's the parents play the big part.
Yeah.
Even though most of the parents are doing their best, but they could learn a few tricks along the way. And it's also one of the things that you actually mentioned there is that like when the culture is in a way that it's generation over generation, the knowledge passes on, and the grandparents are also helping you raising the kids. The new moms learn from them directly, or the aunts or the neighbors, and the knowledge passes on. But here in our society, it's more like here's the handbook that we developed over the past 50 years. Stick with it, use it, and be by yourself, and the rest is intuition.
Yeah.
And that's how we're left alone.
And it's a nice topic, and I'm glad you said that everybody's doing their best. And this is not to say somebody like you should do this or you should do that, but it's more like to hear from real people who have seen it, and like, okay, who are we to say, because we're not parenting, but anyways,
exactly.
These are things that you read from the book, and we heard and experienced and seen ourselves. Yeah.
And the way I see it, it's actually a nice thing to hear that you can still do something about it if you have kids. Because also what she found out, like she was able to change the behavior of the kid with the tips so that she doesn't hate the kids 24/7 now. She's not an enemy anymore. She's just a lovable kid that she has now. One thing came to my mind also about I'm not sure if I remember the details correctly, but when it comes to efficiency of our lives, how, for example, still the doctors and nurses are teaching new moms that you feed a newborn child every 2 hours. And then that's fine. But why 2 hours? Where does that come from? It actually comes from, it was a couple of 100 years ago. There was some hospital where they took new kids in all the time, new parents that they had to do. But they started to be so many that they couldn't anymore feed them with the natural cycle that they had. So one of the doctors came up with the efficiency plan. So this 2 hour, start feeding the babies with 2 hours. Every 2 hours you feed them. So you were able to plan the feeding windows for each of the kids. And this has stuck. This is not anything biological that's how kids should be fed when they're newborn. It's just something that has been in the teaching books for a couple of 100 years, thanks to efficient method, not something that's most useful for the kid.
Yeah, that's a good example. And I don't know, do we live in this society? What do you believe? Are we too much focused on the efficiency?
Way too much. We don't leave space for peace of mind so much anymore that we should. But it's a double-edged sword, because I also want to have the possibilities to, like, I value that everybody has the power to create their own destiny and make the money that they want if they learn the skills. And it requires a lot of hard work and efficiency. But when it leads to, what would you call it, burnouts and depression, anxiety, strained relationships, bad parenting, all these kind of things, then you have to fix something about it. But I believe that it's way too efficiency focused. Because what does it even mean in the end? Are you going to be efficient for 40 years, then you can enjoy 10 years of your life? Is that worth it?
That's a good question. That is a very good question, because in my opinion, if you look at people who are like highly successful, like world champions at anything they do, this is my strong opinion, they do not have a balanced life. That is like the price they have to pay for it. And then sometimes they have, like, even interviewed this guy who was like a famous bodybuilder, and he showed his muscles, like how big muscles, and he was really great at what he does, like many world championships. And then he asked him, "Can I ask you one question? Was it worth it?" And he said, "Well, no. I would give anything to get my family back." So we had a divorce, and I didn't see my child grow and all this. So this is a tough question, because we want to be successful, and great people want to be successful. But it seems to me that achieving a place where you are both successful and fulfilled and have a balanced life, that's the most difficult combination to achieve.
And it's also how we define success. Success is defined by career or money, on position you achieve. Usually it's something business related, right? Or money related. That's how you become successful, or you become famous. Now you're successful. But why don't we talk about if you had peace of mind for the whole of your life, if you treated people with kindness for all of your life, isn't that considered a success? The majority of big thinkers like Dalai Lama, Desmond Tutu, or even this genie whose book that I'm reading, the IBM CEO, all of those, in the end, they come to conclusion that in life, it's most important to live at service of others. That's the purpose, and that gives most fulfillment. And I think you can consider your life a success story if you can live up to the standards that you're actually helping others along the way constantly and are at their service. And you're having a peace of mind yourself. Yeah. I'm probably going to butcher the story a bit, but you also mentioned these stories. But have you heard of this businessman and the fisherman story? Does it ring a bell?
Maybe I have, but maybe you can tell it again to the audience.
Yeah, I think, let me see if I can find it quickly here. Well, I will read it quickly. Let's see if I can. Well, I will paraphrase because I remember it roughly. But there was a businessman who found a fisherman in some of the villages, and the fisherman was catching a lot of fish every day. When he went to the waters, he got the fish. He fed his family, some locals, and he really enjoyed his time. He had a lot of free time with family, and he loved fishing. So he was living a beautiful life, very calm life. Every day caught fish and everything. Then the businessman comes up to him. Wow, you catch a lot of fish. Like, do you know that you could actually make a great business out of it? And then the fisherman, well, what do I get from it? Like, you can catch a lot of fish here. You can sell it there. Then you can make more money. But what you get, what do I get from that? And then now you just start working harder and harder. We can actually create new business models that you can distribute it across North America if you just keep on working hard. And that what do you get from that? Well, then after 20 years of working, you get to retire so that you can then enjoy your days by fishing and spending time with your family.
Yeah, and that's what he was doing already.
Exactly. That's kind of the mindset. I butchered the story a bit, but that's gives the bottom line. But that's the thinking that we're actually having at this moment, and we're both, you and me, we're also guilty of it. And whether or not it's good for us, it's something to think about.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting story, indeed. And is it something that's, well, that's a good one, because we do need, then we come back to this dilemma that if you really want to build that business and you want to be that businessman who brings the business model across the North America or Europe or Asia, wherever you are, and you want to do it, then you actually really do need to work hard, which is a reality. And if you want to have those dream reality, you need to do it. And the best business people, in my opinion, they are like problem solvers, that like they see a problem somewhere and they want to fix it. So in that way, they are serving the community and serving the people. So, but is it like a necessity that the reality is that it leads to this dilemma where you are then 20 years stuck in a place where this is a hard topic, actually.
It is. There we come down to the measurements of success. If you actually lived your life for 40 years, doing that 40, 50, 60 years, that you just fish, you spend time with your family, you're happy with your life. Why isn't that enough? And it was always enough before we got used to this new methods of success and new measurements of success. And more so every day, because each one of us are exposed to people who are quote unquote successful, or at least pretend to be. And it creates a lot of pressure that now that I'm already 22, I'm not successful. How am I going to survive in my life? 22. Okay. And what does being success? Yeah. Well, I saw this person who's 17 and she's already got 1.5 million followers.
Yeah.
What can I do anymore? My life is ruined.
Yeah.
I'm going to drink myself to death.
Yeah. The comparison, very, very toxic in my opinion. That's very unhealthy, because we all have our own path, so to speak.
Naval Ravikant said it beautifully. He said that he used to also struggle when he was younger about jealousy and comparing himself to others. But eventually he realized that he started thinking in a way that, would I change everything about me to what he or she is? Would I have the same looks, same personal traits, same family, same, not only the money or the success that he was jealous of, but would I take everything around it that this person had? And if the answer is no, there's zero reason for any jealousy. And that shifted his mindset, which is a smart way of thinking.
Yeah. And it's a good topic, because also you mentioned about this definition of success, and more these successful people with the definition like the world defines success, like money and fame. A lot of these people actually have now came out and said, I wish everybody got all the money and all the fame in the world, so that they would just realize that this is not the road to the happiness.
And then we come down to the famous quote as well, that I'd rather cry in my Ferrari than in my Toyota.
Yeah, well, would you? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Now we have Toyota now, actually.
You're happy to cry in your Toyota as well.
Yes. Well, yeah.
But it has to be true that if the end point and the outcome is that you're crying for the same reasons, of course it's better that you cry in your Ferrari.
If it's
Of course, if you're debt in $10 million of debt and all the pressures are there, maybe it's not actually better. Now that I think about it.
Well, so to speak, let's say there is this two person, like you mentioned. This is a good example that these two people who think the same way, that the definition of success is the number of, fame and followers and money you gain. And they both think the same way. One person reached the top and one is in the bottom. Then you could say that, yes, the person who at least got to the top is more happy. But we have these stories of the people who say, like, this is because, again, I quote Tony Robbins, because he's quoting Mike Tyson, for example. And like he said, like where he found himself, like from the top of the world and money and fame and everything he could ever have. And I don't know, all the women around him and all the fame and all the fuss, like he's the king of the world. And then he found out that, the success, like Tony Robbins said, he's met these billionaires and realized that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. Because now you're in the top of the world and you see, oh, I did all this work to get here, and even this is not enough. And then they really get depressed. They get to the bits of the depression because they see that on the top of the mountain, there is not what I was looking for.
Always search inwards. I would love to talk to Jim Carrey about these topics one day. He seems like a philosopher kind of guy who's got a hold of. I think he's one of those guys who said that he would like everybody to experience success or fame, and then realize that this is not what makes you happy. But I also want to, because I started the podcast with Krishnamurti, and recently on my own Substack newsletter that I run nowadays as well, so go check it out, #GoCane as well. But I quoted Krishnamurti on there as well. What do you think about this sentence? I think it's part of the discussion that we're having now, but he said that it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
Can you repeat it? It kind of went off my other ear.
Okay. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
Well, I must agree with that. That totally. I must totally agree with that, because I've kind of got a feeling that there is a lot of this sick thinking in our society. We were talking about the definition of success and all these things. I think that's very well put, actually.
I think that comes down, he's talking about health here, but same applies for wealth, success, how we measure it. If it's the society who determines how it is, and the society is sick in its thinking, then is it actually a proper measure of health? I don't think it is.
No.
And that's where we come down to this. Well, we cannot jump into this rabbit hole once again, but if you talk about this, what are the actual motives behind health industries and keeping people kind of dumb in a way that they don't need to be educated better or get better fit because there's someone benefiting from it? So if the whole society is built on this basis, how can we trust what comes as the definition of health or wealth or success?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And then if there is let's say that there is 10 people in the room and 9 people say like something like, which is a total lie. The earth is flat. I know there is those people actually. And then there is one person in the room who says, hey, no, it's round. Then when many people enough tell a lie big enough, loud enough, many times enough, then eventually the one person will believe the lie as well. And this was actually, that was quote from Adolf Hitler. Tell a lie big enough, loud enough, strong enough times, and people will believe it. So that's a good example of people, like most of the humankind thought the earth is flat. And then when like people have these new ideas of earth is actually round, and like we're living in a universe where are millions of stars, all those ideas have been like totally smashed down. Like, this is so crazy, you're stupid. And all new ideas have always been first, like, it's been totally stupid. And then it has become like dangerous because, oh, this might actually be true. And the next step is it's very obvious. Like, it's very obvious now that we living in a round planet.
But still, I don't know if it's like 2,000 years after, we still have those people who believe that the earth is flat. So these stories and dogmas, they just live on.
Yeah.
And we can still, 2,000 years from now, we can still find people who believe that face masks actually work.
I won't call it that topic.
Yeah, but that's or some other things that we're believing these days. I think the jury is still out on that one, so we will not go further there. But it takes a long time, and there will always be people who will follow. And the fear is just an insane motivator for people to buy into stories and stuff.
Yeah, and I think the difficulty is that, like media, like news media, is very much run on profits, and it's not, so to speak, we live in this society that is really running on profits. Everybody needs to make profit, and if you are like a lonely journalist, your bread to be making a living for your family is dependent on making news and stories. And what would be easier than be bombarding people with fear and anxiety and all these things?
That's one of the beautiful things that Elon Musk did. Are you familiar with the Twitter files thing? Have you read about it?
Not so deeply, but yeah.
But since he took over, he went through some internal documents and conversations that the company had with the government officials, FBI, whatever it may be, important decision makers, and the conversations that they had with the company. And he released those documents to few selected journalists like Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss, and I think at least one more.
Yeah.
And now they're going through those documents and conversations to see what was actually going on when it comes to pandemic, when it comes to elections, and how much of the message was actually banned to be published, and how it was moderated because of the government officials told them to do this and that. That's actually a brilliant move by Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. And they're releasing it in Substack, the same platform that I'm using. And I think we would need some, I haven't looked it up yet, but especially living in Finland, I would like that we will have some super journalist, investigative journalist who digs deep down into these topics and publishes there on his own these stories, and people would subscribe to that, because then you're independent of those pressures from your publisher or bosses, or you're not hunting down the clicks. You're actually hunting down real stories and real truths out there. And I wish there was someone in Finland. At least I'm not aware of if there is, but if you know, or if somebody on the line knows, please let me know as well.
For sure. Yes, but very, very interesting topics indeed. So we're looking forward what they're gonna find out into the public about all this.
Yeah, but what they already know is that there was a lot of information that was oppressed, and then even because the government had their own narrative and they needed to support the narrative, so anything that was against that was suppressed and taken down from Twitter, for example, and cancelled, or whatever the word you use for that. And this has been known to be happening, and even and then quoted as misinformation or disinformation or whatever, even though that was never the case. It was just against the common narrative that they wanted to have.
Yeah, exactly. So
and at least nowadays we can have, well, I don't know if we can, but there's optimism surrounding that we can have a bit more open conversation about topics, because we're seeing in the last couple of years a lot of lunacy, not only regarding this topic, but multiple others, that you're taking down voices of opposing views, which is not, to me, open communication. If somebody comes out with the ridiculous claims and such, leave them be. Listen to them, but leave them be. Like, don't. People are influenced by, then it's their fault, but I don't know. Just ridiculous people, they are spotted out from there anyway, I think.
Yeah. It's a very tough topic, and I think it's more than ever important to develop the kind of individual thought process instead of just letting people input whatever into our minds.
Exactly so. And what I propose people to do is actually to how would I put it, that you first, before you have a proper opinion about basically anything, do a bit of research first. And after that, think about what you found. And once you've done that, then think again and like go through it in your head, have conversations with people about this topic, and then you can form some sort of opinion that's closer to the truth, or closer to your truth at least, instead of just taking one of the narratives of whoever is a person maybe you're respecting or public entity that you're appreciating a lot.
Yeah.
If it's just someone and you just take a message at its face value, it's not worth it. Listen to that, research the topic a little bit more, think for yourself, then research a bit more, rethink it, discuss it, and then you have formed an opinion. Now you can speak it out. And the outcome might be that the opinion is the same that you would have had from the first narrative that you heard. But now at least you gave some thought to it, and you have some depth in your thinking and in your claims.
Well, that's very true. But how do we do it if the parents, we go back to the topic where we started? If we have been taught our children to listen to what I say and don't say anything against it, and don't make any decisions. I think that's one of the worst ones. You make all the decisions for them, while in reality, when you make a decision, you know that how do you become a good decision maker? By making bad decisions and learning from them. But if we're protecting the children, okay, I'm not a parent coach or anything, but coming
that
back
that actually makes a lot of sense. It's a good connection point. Because if a child is continuously raised in a way that mom and dad are right in about everything, and you should listen to me, do this, do that, this is the truth. Of course, your brain is then wired that way, right? And then the next authority comes, a teacher does the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's the politician, and then it's the government, then it's a health official, then it's your boss, manager, whatever.
Yeah.
And they don't question it, of course. That makes sense.
And then when there is a time to make decision, they freeze. Oh, well, tell me what to do, because they have been always told what to do in their home instead of taught to make their own decisions.
Exactly. That makes sense. Great connection.
Yeah, it all came back to this this from the beginning.
It's closing the circle, closing the loop.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good moment to wrap it up.
Yeah, it might be. Yes.
It's a definite sign of having a good closure for this conversation.
Yeah. And then also, wait, I had something to say that I don't remember who said it, that people secretly want to be led. And it's kind of like the idea came from me from there. Okay, why do they want to be led? Okay, maybe because they were always, of course, it's good to have boundaries in home. I'm a very strong supporter of having boundaries, but if you've always been told what to do, the child is not going to become a leader. They're going to be led by these other people than you, because you're not always around them as a parent, and it might be a gang or on some other ill thing if they're not really used to making their own decisions.
And these days I also question the claims that people want to be led, because most of I think we discussed it before, most of the psychological studies that have been made with people of European descent, right? So if we come to conclusions of specific behavior or thinking models from our Western societies and the way that you and I think, or people around us, this doesn't mean that everywhere in the world the conclusion is the same. So I would argue that if you go into these, like Hadzabe tribe, for example, you can find a lot more independent people from very early age compared to what we have here, and they are more than capable of making their own decisions compared to kids in our societies. I would make the claim, but most of the research and these claims come from the studies that only take into account our European descendants. Or
of course, yeah, exactly. So that's a good place to end.
That's a good place to end. Have a wonderful spring and lifetime, my friends, and enjoy some peace and beauty.
Yes, enjoy, and see you next time.
Ciao.